An 11-year-old boy named Daniel, killed by a shrapnel-loaded car bomb on a Montreal street. He wasn't in a gang. He wasn't a target. He was a kid walking home. The kingpin who orchestrated the war that killed Daniel, he died behind bars in 2022, serving a life sentence. He's number 2 on this list, but the man at number 1, he belonged to an earlier, darker era of the club. He took 43 lives, officially, on record, and he walked free. This is not a list of the most famous Hells Angels. Fame and dangerous are two completely different things. What you're about to hear is built on federal court records, criminal confessions, and documented history that most people never dig deep enough to find. Some of these men you've never heard of. That was exactly the point. Before we count down, 2 things you need to know. First, dangerous in this world doesn't just mean violent. In outlaw MC culture, and MC stands for motorcycle club, the most dangerous men aren't always the ones pulling triggers. Sometimes they're the ones deciding who gets targeted. Sometimes they're the ones who vanished and haven't been found in over 20 years. Second, and I want to be straight with you about this, some of these men destroyed innocent lives. I'm not here to make them cool. I'm here to tell you what actually happened, because the real history is darker, more complex, and more interesting than any Hollywood version. Let's get into it. Starting at number 10, Phil the Olympic Biker, Boudreault. Olympics, 1996. Phil Boudreault represented Canada on the world's biggest amateur sports stage. Years later, those elite skills found a different arena. He became a Hells Angels enforcer. Same hands, deadly purpose. Boudreault rose to become vice president of the Ontario Nomads. And the Nomads, let me explain that real quick. The Nomads chapter has no fixed territory. Think of them as the club's elite enforcers. They go where they're needed. You don't get into the Nomads because you're loud. You get in because you're the most reliable, most capable, most dangerous asset available. Boudreault brought Olympic-level combat training straight into criminal operations. Court records and law enforcement files describe him as a feared enforcer, explosive, precise, and completely committed. Here's the detail that stops people cold. In 2016, someone tried to kill him, a targeted ambush. They shot him and left him paralyzed, and he still remained an active figure in the biker underworld, in a wheelchair. Think about what that tells you about the man. Most people, after something like that, are done. Boudreault was not done. From law enforcement's perspective, Boudreault represented a new generation of Hells Angels leadership, not the old image of the beer-soaked brawler. Agitated, disciplined, strategically dangerous, an Olympian who chose a different kind of competition and excelled at it. Number 9 ran an entire state like a private empire, and the one rule he enforced above everything else will make your jaw drop. Number 9, Pat Matter. Pat Matter was the boss of the Minneapolis Hells Angels. And boss is the right word, not president, not leader, boss. He ran Minnesota's underworld the way a CEO runs a Fortune 500 company. Clear hierarchy, strict performance expectations, and brutal, documented consequences for failure. Matter controlled massive drug pipelines across the Midwest, methamphetamine, cocaine. He enforced territorial boundaries with systematic, calculated violence. Never reactive, never emotional, plan. But here's the detail that reveals how Matter truly operated. While all outlaw bikers share an unwritten code of silence, Matter formalized it into a corporate ritual. If you wanted to prospect for his chapter, you had to stand before Matter and his officers and explicitly say the words out loud. You had to state plainly that you were prepared to face prison or death before you would ever betray the club. He stripped away the mystery and made them state the ultimate price of entry as a literal condition of employment. Put yourself in that room. You're sitting across from Pat Matter. His officers are surrounding you, and you have to look him in the eye and say out loud, "I accept that this might kill me or lock me up for life." That's the price of the patch, and men were lining up to pay it. That tells you everything about the culture Matter built. Matter eventually flipped
became a government witness to avoid a lengthy sentence. In MC culture, this is called going rat, the deepest possible betrayal. The man who made his recruits swear they'd accept death before betrayal chose neither imprisonment nor death. He chose the witness stand, the code he enforced on every single person beneath him. He didn't apply to himself when it counted, not even close. Number 8 takes us to one of the most watched moments in rock and roll history and one of the most public acts of fatal violence ever recorded. Number 8, Alan Passaro. December 6, 1960, Altamont Speedway, free concert, 300,000 people. The Rolling Stones needed stage security. They hired the Hells Angels. Payment, $500 worth of beer. An 18-year-old audience member named Meredith pushed towards the stage. He pulled a gun. Alan Passaro, a Hells Angels member working security, pulled a knife. Hunter was stabbed to death, and the cameras never stopped rolling. The Maisels brothers were filming a documentary of the concert. They didn't even realize what they had captured until weeks later in an editing room. There it was, Passaro's face, his arm, the lethal moment, all frozen on celluloid. It became the centerpiece of a murder trial. Passaro was ultimately acquitted. The jury accepted self-defense because Hunter had drawn a firearm first. Passaro walked, but the damage to the culture was already done. Here's what Altamont really was. For years before that day, the counterculture had romanticized the Hells Angels. Hunter Thompson had written about them. They rode at the edges of the peace and love movement. They were dangerous but glamorous. Altamont ended all of that in one afternoon, on camera, in front of 300,000 people. The romantic version of the outlaw biker died at Altamont. What the world saw replace it was cold, immediate, and lethal. Passaro died in 1985, found drowned in a reservoir, officially ruled accidental. Some accounts suggest it wasn't. The truth, genuinely, has never been confirmed. He was the man the camera caught, the face of something the club had been doing for decades, just never on film before. Let that sit. Coming up, we leave America, and this is where the body counts start getting numbers that don't feel real. From here on, this list gets heavier. The men you're about to hear about didn't just commit violence, they restructured entire criminal landscapes. Law enforcement had to change how they operated because of these specific individuals. Pay attention to the details, because the details are where the real story lives.
Number 7. Felix Lyle. Most people think the Hells Angels' most savage conflicts happened in North America. They're wrong. Australia became a corporate war zone, and Felix Lyle was the mastermind helping guide the Hells Angels through the chaos. Known in the underworld as Big Felix, Lyle wasn't a standard street brawler. He was the president of the Hells Angels Sydney chapter. He took the reins of a chapter locked in brutal turf wars against fierce local rivals like the Comancheros, Nomads, firebombings, drive-by shootings, and a massive, fatal brawl against rivals right inside the Sydney airport terminal. The chaos completely broke the patience of the government. Lyle operated at the absolute intersection of finance and muscle. He faced charges ranging from massive identity fraud rings to major drug supply operations. Here's what most people outside Australia completely miss. The Hells Angels didn't expand down under just to ride motorcycles. Australia sits at a highly lucrative geographic crossroads for drug trafficking between Asia and the Pacific. Control the Australian entry points and you control a multi-billion-dollar black market. The actions of Lyle's chapter forced the Australian government to pass historic, aggressive anti-gang legislation. They legally reclassified motorcycle clubs as criminal organizations. Every major police crackdown in Australia over the last 15 years traces directly back to the chaos of this era. Number 6 survived 30 years, multiple assassination attempts, and a murder-for-hire trial. And the thing that finally brought him down, you won't see it coming. Number 6, George Christie. George Christie ran the Ventura chapter of the Hells Angels for over 30 years. 30 years in a world where leadership changes happen through violence, federal indictments, or death.
30 years in charge is almost impossible. Christie didn't run his chapter like a typical biker. He ran it like a corporate boss. He built relationships with local politicians. He carefully managed the Hells Angels' public image. He made the Ventura chapter look from the outside almost respectable. In 1987, he stood trial, charged with hiring a hitman to kill an exiled former Hells Angel turned outcast. He was acquitted. Christie has maintained his innocence on multiple charges, but the records from that case are complex, and the full picture is still debated. He survived that trial. He survived multiple assassination attempts. He survived decades of intense federal surveillance. What got him in the end? Tattoo shops. He was convicted of racketeering and extortion tied to the firebombing of local tattoo shops that refused to cooperate with his chapter. Not a rival club, not a major drug cartel. Tattoo shops, 30 years, assassination attempts, a murder-for-hire trial, federal investigations stretching across multiple decades, and the thing that finally breaks through the armor is tattoo shops. The empire's last stand was over ink. If you wrote that in a movie, they'd tell you it's not believable. The club eventually expelled him, stripped his patch, put him out bad. That's the worst outcome in MC culture. You're not just out, you're an enemy. Your brothers are now strangers, or worse. Christie wrote a memoir. It's one of the most candid insider accounts of Hells Angels leadership that's ever been published. A man who gave 30 years to an organization, then watched that organization completely erase him. Whatever you think of his choices, that's a remarkable story. 30 years, then nothing. Think about what that costs a person. Number 5 was the national president of the Canadian Hells Angels. He didn't kill people himself. He was far more dangerous than that. Number 5, Walter Stoney Stadnick. Walter Stoney Stadnick was the national president of the Canadian Hells Angels, and here's the first thing you need to know about him. Known in the underworld as Nugget, he was a small 5'4" man. He carried severe facial scars from a near-fatal motorcycle explosion early in his life. He was not a physically intimidating presence. He didn't command attention through size. He commanded it through results. Stadnick's goal was simple and devastating. He wanted the Hells Angels across every single province in Canada, British Columbia to Ontario to Quebec to the East Coast, complete national coverage, and he executed that vision with a corporate precision that left law enforcement scrambling for years. He brokered peace with the Montreal Mafia, specifically the Rizzuto crime family, one of the most powerful criminal syndicates in North American history. That deal opened massive cocaine supply lines that could flood the entire country. While Stadnick sat in clean boardroom meetings and signed off on alliances, the men he funded were executing rivals in the streets. Let me put this in perspective. Stadnick wasn't running a motorcycle club. He was running a national criminal franchise, drug distribution, revenue streams, territorial control from coast to coast, and he built it all by making strategic deals that most chaotic street gangs would be too aggressive or too stupid to maintain. He was patient. He was thinking 5 years ahead, while his competitors were thinking 5 minutes ahead. That's why he was dangerous, not his fists, his brain. When the government finally brought him down in a massive sweep operation, he faced 13 counts of first-degree murder. He beat those direct charges, but ultimately was convicted of conspiracy to commit murder, drug trafficking, and gangsterism, sentenced to 20 years. Sound familiar? Because this pattern, the executive criminal, the man above the violence who controls the violence, shows up in every major organized crime story in history. The Mafia had them, the cartels have them, and the Hells Angels had Walter Stadnick. The most dangerous person in any organized crime organization is almost never the most violent one. Number 4 has been missing for over 20 years. Multiple agencies, multiple countries, and nobody has found him, not even close. Number 4, David Wolf Carroll, the Ghost. David Wolfe Carroll is one of Maurice Boucher's primary enforcers in the Quebec nomads. I said is, present tense, because Carroll is still out there. Carroll is officially wanted for 13 counts of first-degree murder tied to the brutal Quebec biker war. He had deep connections to international drug trafficking networks. He operated at the strategic level, not just as muscle, but as someone who decided who got targeted and when. He was one of the most connected, most dangerous assets in the most violent biker conflict in history. And in 2001, when springtime hit Quebec, the largest anti-biker sweep operation in Canadian history, 100 arrests in a single coordinated action, Carroll was not among them. He vanished just before the net closed. Here's what makes this genuinely unsettling. Most dangerous criminals are dangerous because of what they've done. Carroll is dangerous because of what he might still be doing. A man with 13 murder counts, cartel connections, and the operational intelligence to disappear before one of the biggest law enforcement actions in Canadian history. That man doesn't just retire, he rebuilds somewhere under a different name with different contacts and over 20 years of experience staying invisible. Multiple agencies, multiple countries, Interpol involvement, more than 20 years of searching, nothing. He's been gone since 2001 and nobody has found him. Not law enforcement, not rivals who'd have every reason to want him located. The truth is, nobody knows where David Carroll is right now. And that is the most dangerous thing about him. The top 3 on this list are in a different category entirely. Number 3 built the entire Hells Angels empire, and the government spent decades trying to stop him and just kept making him more powerful.
Number 3. Ralph Sonny Barger, the architect. Sonny Barger did not found the global Hells Angels, but by the time he was done with them, the original founding felt like a footnote. Barger started the club's Oakland chapter in 1957, 19 years old. He'd lied about his age to get into the army, got caught, got discharged. He came back to Oakland with nothing, no money, no future that anyone else could see. Just a bike and an instinct for power that would reshape an entire subculture. Within a decade, his Oakland chapter became the undisputed center of the Hells Angels universe. Barger standardized the patch process. He built real communication between chapters that had previously operated completely independently. He created a unified identity around the Death Head, the skull logo that is now recognized on 6 continents. He turned a scattered collection of local California riding clubs into a disciplined global organization with a command structure, a brand, and a code. Under Barger, violence against rivals wasn't just tolerated, it was institutionalized. Loyalty was absolute, and Barger didn't just enforce that standard on others. In 1988, a federal conviction, conspiracy to blow up a rival outlaw's MC clubhouse. He didn't just send foot soldiers to do the work, he was actively in it. You cannot overstate what Barger built. Before him, the Hells Angels were a regional California story. After him, they were a global empire. The Death Head patch is on 6 continents. That didn't happen by accident or natural momentum. That happened because one man decided his chapter was going to dictate the rules to everyone else and made every hard choice necessary to get there. That's not leadership, that's obsession turned into architecture. Every federal charge, every sensational news story, every government hearing about the Hells Angels made Barger more powerful. The FBI's most sustained effort to destroy the club essentially became the club's most effective advertising campaign. The government kept trying to erase Sonny Barger and kept making him a counterculture legend instead. Barger died in June 2022. He was 83 years old. He outlived most of his enemies, most of his friends, and most of the federal agents who spent their entire careers trying to lock him away permanently. 83 years old. Let that sit for a second. The man the federal government spent decades trying to crush died in his own time, on his own terms. Make of that what you will. 2 men left, and I'm going to tell you right now, the story at number 2 contains one of the most disturbing decisions any crime boss in history ever made. And at number 1, a number that still doesn't feel real, 43. Stay with me.
Number 2. Maurice Boucher, the War Machine. Maurice Boucher, president of the Quebec Nomads, the Hells Angels' elite Canadian chapter, the man who turned a local drug war into something that looked more like an armed insurgency. The nickname Mom, the softest possible moniker for one of the most ruthless men on this list, originally started as a play on his initials, MB, but over time it took on a darker meaning as he began aggressively mentoring younger members, taking them under his wing. He wanted people to feel fiercely loyal to his vision, and he used that loyalty like a weapon. The Quebec Biker War, 1994 to 2002. Hells Angels versus Rock Machine MC, a rival club fighting for control of Montreal's drug trade. Boucher didn't just fight this war, he escalated it past every boundary that traditional criminal organizations typically respect. Over 160 people died, but two specific moments define what Boucher actually was. August 9th, 1995. A car bomb explodes on a Montreal street. The target, a drug dealer connected to the Rock Machine. The victim, Daniel DeRochers, 11 years old, killed by flying shrapnel. A kid going about his day, ended by a war that had absolutely nothing to do with him. Daniel DeRochers was 11 years old. He wasn't in a gang. He wasn't a target. He was a kid on a street in his own neighborhood. And the war Boucher was running, the escalation he personally drove, put a bomb on that street. Every number you hear about the Quebec Biker War, every statistic, every body count, starts and ends with Daniel. Boucher's direct personal knowledge of that specific device is legally debated. The bomb was intended for a rival, but Boucher built and commanded the machine that put it there. The distinction matters legally. Morally, it's much harder to draw. The second moment, 1997. Boucher ordered the cold-blooded murders of correctional guards, not rival bikers, not cartel associates, people whose only job was to work in a correctional facility. Diane Levine, a correctional officer, was shot and killed. A second guard, Pierre Rondeau, was also executed. The explicit message Boucher wanted to send: the justice system had no protected employees. No one who worked for the state was safe. When you start targeting correctional guards, people whose only connection to you is their uniform, you've stopped being a criminal protecting territory. You've declared war on the functioning of society itself. Boucher wasn't just fighting the Rock Machine. He was trying to make the entire justice system afraid to process his men. That's not standard organized crime. That's insurgency, and it almost worked. Almost. The public fury over Daniel's death, the murder of Diane Levine, the mounting body count, it finally gave the Canadian government the political will and the public support to act. New anti-gang legislation, Bill C-95, passed in 1997. New powers, new funding, new legal tools specifically designed to crush criminal organizations from the top down. Boucher's reckless aggression built the exact legal framework that eventually destroyed him. He was convicted of murdering those correctional guards. He died behind bars in July 2022. Throat cancer, life sentence, 69 years old. The man who tried to make the entire Canadian justice system bow to him died in a cell that same system put him in. He spent his final years in exactly the place he'd tried to make everyone afraid to send his men. And now, Number 1, the man who confessed to 43 murders, who wore an elite badge of violence that few outsiders truly understand, and who, in the end, traded his brothers for his freedom. This is the full story. Number 1, Yves Apache Trudeau, the deadliest Hells Angel who ever lived. Yves Apache Trudeau, member of the Hells Angels Laval chapter, later the North chapter in Quebec. He confessed to 43 murders, officially on record in a Canadian court, and investigators believed the real number was even higher, 43 people. Each one woke up that morning and didn't know it was their last day on Earth. Trudeau operated as the club's chief enforcer and assassin across the late 1970s and early 1980s. Shootings,
brutal bombings, which is where his alternate nickname, the Mad Bomber, came from. Court testimony later described him using heavy amounts of cocaine before carrying out hits, a desperate attempt to numb himself to what he was about to do. 43 times that process played out. Try to picture 43 people, not as a cold statistic, as human beings. Each one had a name, a family, a morning routine, a last conversation they didn't know was their last. One man was responsible for ending all of them, and he used narcotics to make it easier to go out and do it again. The sheer scale of that, the human scale, not the criminal scale, should stop you completely. But Trudeau wasn't just prolific. He became the face of the club's most infamous shrouded tradition. Trudeau was awarded the notorious Filthy Few patch.
Let me explain what that is. The Filthy Few patch is a small secondary patch worn alongside the main club colors. It is an elite badge of recognition awarded to members who have committed murder on behalf of the club. While the patch originally emerged decades earlier within the original California chapters, Trudeau became its most lethal and prolific bearer in Canadian history, the absolute standard that every enforcer after him was measured against. He was the ultimate template. Think about what that means. The underworld created a formal silent recognition system for taking a life, a decoration, a reward, a signal to every member in every chapter about exactly how far you were willing to go. And Yves Trudeau was the man who maxed out that metric. But the ultimate irony of his story is how it ended. After decades of killing for his brothers, the club turned on his chapter during the infamous Lennoxville Purge of 1985, where the club executed 5 of their own members. Realizing he was next on the hit list, Trudeau flipped. He became a star government witness, trading his confessions for a heavily reduced sentence and a brand new identity in witness protection. He beat the streets, but he couldn't beat time. In March 2008, the deadliest Hell's Angel in history quietly died of cancer while living under a government hidden name. Just like Maurice Boucher 14 years later, the ultimate engine of the biker wars was stopped by a disease he couldn't outrun. 43 victims, a lifetime of terror, and it ends quietly under a fake name in a hospital bed. That is how the deadliest story in the history of the 1%ers finally comes to a close. 10 men, 10 different versions of dangerous. An Olympian who chose a different competition. A Minneapolis boss who demanded his recruits state the price of entry out loud. The man the camera caught at Altamont. An Australian chapter president whose violence broke a government. A California boss who lasted 30 years and still got erased. A fugitive who's been missing for over 20 years. The national president who built a countrywide criminal empire with a peace deal and a map. The emblem of the club, a man who built something that outlived every attempt to destroy it. The architect of the bloodiest biker war in history, who declared war on the justice system itself. And the deadliest member in the club's entire history, who killed 43 people for the Brotherhood and learned the hard way that the Brotherhood was conditional. The men on this list are gone, dead, imprisoned, or disappeared into the shadows. But the machine they built, the architecture that made them dangerous, that machine is still running. Drop machine wins or machine ends in the comments right now. Next video, we're going inside the infamous Lennoxville Purge. If you're not subscribed, do it now. One click, real history, no filler. Every week, I'll see you on the road.